Michael, you did an interview in Cleveland where we just held a presidential debate. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I should set the scene too. Ordinarily, when we go to these debates, after the debate, there's a spin room. There's availability from both campaigns, or the many campaigns during the primaries, to speak to some of their surrogates, to speak to the candidates themselves. Not the case here because of COVID. But Tim Murtaugh, who is the communications director for the Trump reelect campaign, was over here, and I was able to, although he wasn't excited about answering a question, I was able to follow him to ask him a question that bothered me during the debate. Here's Tim Murtaugh. He's the communications director for Trump.
It was a dominating performance. He was in command of the entire situation every moment of the debate. And Joe Biden looked weak, unable to defend his 47 years of failure in Washington, unable to articulate a vision for the future. And he kept on looking around for help from the moderator and, I don't know, somebody in the crowd, anybody who could help him.
And the question about white supremacists and denouncing white supremacists, the president didn't really pounce on that one. Would you have liked that he answered that a little better?
The president has repeatedly denounced white supremacists. Just this past week, he declared the Ku Klux Klan a terrorist organization. The president has been absolutely clear on this. He has the best record for the African American
But tonight,
community.
sir, he wasn't perfectly clear. Would you in another debate say you should be clearer about that?
There is no ambiguity. The president has denounced repeatedly white supremacy. He declared the KKK a terrorist organization, something that Joe Biden has never done in 47 years in Washington.
Well,
Thanks.
Joe, okay, but Tim,
Okay, Michael, I love it. Thank you for asking that question. You get in that answer the dichotomy between the professional Republicans who know how to prevaricate better and Donald Trump who doesn't. And they're constantly, basically apologizing for him after the fact. But we all heard it clear as day. Chris Wallace asked him arguably, actually not arguably, definitely a softball. Do you denounce white supremacists? It doesn't get any easier than that question. And Trump did not say yes. He kept asking for clarifications and he never said yes. What do you make of that answer, Michael?
I mean, in 2020, it is literally the easiest question that any presidential candidate, for any candidate at any office level in America, student body president, the easiest question to answer, and he didn't answer it when it was posed to him. And again, I don't know why this is problematic for him. And it speaks to the whole idea that he is afraid to drive a wedge with the extreme side of his party. But what he views as the extreme side of the Democratic Party, which is the progressive side, he's trying, and I think it's a terrible tactic, trying to drive a wedge between Democrats by getting Joe Biden to talk about being for the Green New Deal, being for defunding the police, things that Joe Biden, and being for Medicare for all, things that Joe Biden isn't for. And I think that they were all good answers on the part of Biden tonight politically as the nominee for the party to say that he's not for the Green New Deal. But here's the plan I have, and here's what you've done. I'm not for Medicare for all. Here's the plan I have. Here's what you've done. I'm not necessarily going to defund the police. Those are not my words. Here's the plan I have. Here's what you've done. He didn't perfectly articulate any of those plans, but rather than sort of hemming and hawing, he decisively answered those questions. And what we've proven now is that this election won't be won because of the idea that there's a wedge in the Democratic Party, which may have happened in 2016 or may not have. But I just think that Donald Trump sees a fear in his own party, and he's trying to project that onto Joe Biden. I think the answer you heard from Murtaugh there was pretty clear. You're right, Cenk. It shows you that Donald Trump is not a professional politician. The people around him are party apparatchiks still Republicans who are going to equivocate what he said.
Well, oftentimes Trump uses the fact that he's not a professional politician as advantage for him, because people don't like politicians. Of all the questions that Frank Luntz asked in his focus group after the debate, almost all of them were negative for Trump. In fact, the word crackhead stood out, which is amazing, unprecedented. As a description of Donald Trump, the current president of the United States. Right. But for Biden, the only one that was arguably significantly negative was politician, evasive, right? And so now at the same time, there's a reason why you give at least halfway rational answers and don't go full racist and go white supremacist. Haven't made up my mind yet. I'll get back to you.
Right.
And so I don't think the country, and we had this debate earlier, but I don't think the country's as racist as Donald Trump thinks it is. I think it's going to backfire on him. He's already got his base. He needs to expand beyond his base, and he's just not doing that. I do disagree with you, Michael, on his inability to drive a wedge between progressives and the rest of the party, because as I'm about to show you, I think he did. It bothered me greatly. It didn't bother me greatly enough that I would ever consider not getting Trump out of office. And the way you do that is to vote for Joe Biden. That's the realistic option right now. But when Biden loudly denounced Green New Deal and Medicare for all and defunding the police, I mean, not just defunding, but he said, I want to add money to the police, basically help the police. None of that made me like him any better. None of them that made me want to support him or get excited about him. And the only thing it did is make me think about who can primary him in 2024.
But let me interrupt you before you play what you're about to play. That's exactly what I'm saying, Cenk. What just happened, this dynamic, none of that did that. And that's why it's fine for Joe Biden to do that, because none of that got you to do that. And there's a wink and a nod with progressives now with Joe Biden to a degree. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a primary. It doesn't mean that this is exactly the candidate that they want. But if this is a referendum on Donald Trump, which I think we can all safely say to a great degree this election is, then that doesn't matter. And so you just proved the point I was making, because I don't think that any of those things are going to take people away. But if he does go in that direction, he's proven right now in a primary that those ideas specifically didn't win the primary. They came close and they're very popular within the party, but they didn't win the primary. Doing what he did won the primary. So he's not going to change course now, but I think as president, he's going to learn that he needs to go in a much more progressive direction. I think he is exactly the type of person who will do that, because he's a people pleaser, and that's exactly what he wants to do.
Anna, your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I just think that if Trump is going to attack Biden from the right, and then Biden's going to respond by giving right-wing answers, it's not going to play well with some portion of the Democratic voters. The only thing Biden really has working for him right now is that Trump is so unbelievably awful that people want him out, and that's where I'm at. That's not a glowing endorsement of Joe Biden. I think the fact that Biden wants to fund police more without having like a comprehensive answer about what needs to be done to reform policing before more funding is funneled to police is an issue. And I'll say this, right? Like, we need to consider the fact that he needs to give people a reason to like go out of their way to vote. And right now, especially with this election, you would need to go out of your way. If you're gonna vote in person, especially in a swing state, you're gonna deal with armed Trump people who are gonna show up to those polls with the very intention of intimidating individuals who wanna vote. And so are people gonna wanna put themselves in that situation in order to cast their ballots for Biden? And so his campaign just needs to be a little more about what he's gonna do to improve the lives of people, outside of just getting rid of an awful incumbent president like Donald Trump. That's where I'm at with it.
If I could just respond to Anna, I don't disagree with what Anna's saying. I think his presidency has to be about that. I don't think it's necessary for his campaign at this point of the campaign to be about that. It's defined who Joe Biden is, and it's also defined who he isn't. And I think that the Democrats have chosen their horse for this race, and they are banking on sort of outrage and fatigue. And I do think, and I mentioned this maybe earlier here, but I think that if Trump fatigue is a real thing, I know that it's a real thing. I think 2018 proved that it was a real thing. If it's a real thing, then this was, and this is why I tweeted it, that this is peak Trump fatigue. And when you are at peak Trump fatigue, I think you play it carefully. You guys, and I understand the passion behind it, may think that playing it carefully isn't the right thing. I think the presidency has to be about more than that. I think getting there is Joe Biden's job, and I think he's doing it okay.
I'm curious what John thinks, but look, I'll just say real quick, it might work this time because they're up against, as the focus group said, a crackhead. But it didn't work last time. Being really, really careful and cautious and timid got us Trump in the first place.
That was a personality thing, though, Jake. That was also
no.
There were so
the problem, Michael, in the long run is that the Democrats never make their case. In fact, and Biden did it again tonight. Oh, you're right about Green New Deal being too far left. You're right about Medicare for all. You're right about defunding the police. And in the long term, what that does is it does damage to your brand and people's perception of, are you strong? Do you believe what you stand for? And do you stand for anything? And I think that does more damage in the long run. Yes, but the short run in this particular case is so massively important that we'll all get beyond it for the moment being. But then how much damage does that do in the long run is what I was saying.
And I was only talking about it in the context of tonight's debate. I wasn't talking about it as a blueprint for the future for the party. I think in the context of tonight's debate and the 40 days that are left in this race, I think we're all on the same page here.
John.
Yeah, look, I think in terms of some of the policy, he didn't seem overly eager to delve into his plans. And to be fair to him, I guess, even if that is what he wanted, this was clearly not an environment that was going to make that easy. Trump was obviously talking over him. But one of the things that I think he did that sort of unnecessarily hurt him insofar as his ability for these debates to serve to broaden his appeal to those on the left is, like when he was talking about climate change, a lot of what he had to say was pretty good. He talked about the fact that we're not gonna have any more coal-fired power plants and things like that. He went into some of the details there, but then he expressed himself like, no, I don't support the Green New Deal. Why not say, I support the vast majority of the spirit of the Green New Deal? He could pitch it in a better way. I feel like sometimes, maybe because the pressure's on him and Trump is goading him, like he feels like he has to show how little respect he has for this side of the party, when he could be talking about the fact that he had this commission on dealing with the climate crisis. And a good number of people that I trust quite a bit on that came out of it thinking that Joe Biden is probably going to be persuadable on these issues. He could talk about that, but sometimes I feel like, I don't know if it's because he thinks that saying this is going to win him Republicans or it's just a spur of the moment thing. He doesn't realize what signals he's sending. He sort of unnecessarily pokes his thumb in the eyes of leftists that he does still need to support him in this presidency. Not in any way implying that I'm not going to. We're, the horse is jumping the chasm right now. We just have to hope that it sticks the landing. But just some of those moments just didn't have to happen, I think.
Yeah, and there's one thing that is clear to me, and I think should be clear to everybody, which is that Trump and the Republican Party love their base. And you could argue, and I would argue, that Trump overdoes it by thinking that his base is all white supremacists and saying, I refusing to denounce white supremacists. But the Democrats make the opposite mistake, where they never cater to their base. In fact, they go out of their way to insult their base as often as possible. In the long run, that does untold damage.
Well, one base is far more homogeneous than the other, and I think that is, that's fact. And I know what you're saying too, Cenk. But at the same time, I don't think there is any base abandonment going on here. I think everybody knows what Joe Biden has to do with the smart politics of it, not in terms of the campaign politics of it, the electoral politics versus the smart politics of when he, if he wins, when he is a president. So I do think that getting there and once you're there and what you do are two very different things. And I think I think many people will see that with Joe Biden. I think it's very smart to do what he did tonight personally from just purely winning this race. I don't think it's about winning Republicans over. I don't think you win Republicans over. I think that's a fallacy. There's some who don't like voting for Trump and they're going to vote for Biden in ways that they wouldn't vote for Clinton last time. But I do think that there are people who don't like the labels in politics and are afraid of the word socialist and buy into some of what the president is selling. And if they see it denounced, it might help. I think many minds are made up already, though.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.